Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Gwen Gringheis. I'm the Assistant Registrar Recruitment and International at the John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape, and Design. And I am so pleased that you have decided to join us today. So I will turn it over very shortly to Professor Vivian Lee to lead you through a presentation on the Master of Architecture program. But I did just want to briefly go through some housekeeping items. So we will go through a presentation to start, after which we will open it up for a Q&A. If you do have any questions at all, I would encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can put your questions in there and we will answer them after the presentation has been completed. So I will turn it over to you, Professor Vivian Lee.
Hi, everybody. Good evening, morning, noon, wherever you're joining us. I'll try to keep my presentation to about half an hour, and that leaves us half the time for questions. I hope I address some of the questions in my presentation. So the Masters of Architecture program is MARC. It could be also written M.Arch, ARCH, but we all pronounce it MARC in case you're confused across the various acronyms. For those of you who are not near Toronto, I hope you can join us one of these days. It is a beautiful new building, and we are in the heart of Toronto in a very exciting architectural masterpiece. You can see my background here, that's the Master's Studio space. And so I'd love to be able to give you a tour. But I also want to clear up a few different programs. I've noticed that this helps students get acquainted with the variety of offerings at the Daniels faculty. So I'm the director of the Masters of Architecture program. This includes both the advanced standing track as well as the normal 3-year track, and I can elaborate on that. But there is also the Master of Architecture post-professional program, also a Master of Landscape Architecture post-professional program. And that's a separate, different thing because it is a non-accredited program. So what it is, it's a 1-year program for students or individuals already holding a professional degree in architecture. And you are just looking to augment your licensure with a research area of interest. And these are some of the areas that we offer, although you can certainly reach out to the director of the post-professional program, Mason White, to contact him about any special arrangement or an area of focus that's not listed on our website. He'd be more than happy to talk with you and kind of tailor that year of research towards your goals. Now I'm going to get into the program that I am the director of, which is the Master of Architecture. We are an accredited program, and I just want to again lay out a little bit of where we are. We are part of the downtown St. George campus of University of Toronto. So it's very exciting to be at our school, but also to be a part of this greater academic setting where you can take courses from all across campus. Our own graduate, and this is not just the Masters of Architecture, but all of the graduate students were about 360 at the Daniels faculty. In the master's program, I'm going to say we're about 260 to 270. And then we have this very robust undergraduate group of 1,000 students, which is great news for the master's students because we are often serving as the teaching assistants to these undergraduates, and that's augmented opportunity here at University of Toronto compared with other Canadian universities. I often spend long on this slide, so I'm going to try to keep it a little bit shorter, but it'll come up again at the end in case you have questions about it. I hope you can see my mouse. This line here indicates the entry point for advanced placement students. Now, I basically have a 3-year program that I run. And should you come from an undergraduate degree that's an accredited degree, and you will usually know this because I think schools are eager to sell to you that they have an accredited undergrad degree, usually in Bachelor's of Architectural Science, you are able and eligible to apply for it's either called advanced placement or advanced standing or MARC 2 program. Those are all synonymous and, not to be confused. They just all mean the same thing, which is that you want to be considered for coming in here at year 2 and joining us for the latter 2 years of our 3-year program. I want to also elaborate that just because you're eligible does not mean that you get in. It's actually a very competitive program where we are targeting around 24 students, but we often get way more applications than that. And so you can also check a box to also be considered for the 3-year program if you're willing to be considered. And what will happen is we first review, there's a whole committee group that reviews for the advanced placement program, and this includes many of the professors who teaches in these courses. And if you check a box and you want to be considered for the 3-year program, if you don't make it in our 2-year program, you're not accepted. Then we will put your portfolio and all your application materials for the 3-year committee to review. So you'll be reviewed twice by actually all new members again. Happy to elaborate on that more. A few points I want to bring up. Basically, classes start not after Labor Day, but for the first 2 years, they will start in August. And this is usually around middle of August, depending on how the calendar falls. So you should be aware of that. There's also starting from early August, actually this year, because of the way the calendar worked, I think it started the last day of July. There's also a skills workshop for new design students. And what this is that we absolutely welcome students with no architecture background whatsoever. In fact, in my own experience, I find that they bring a new lens into the curriculum. And by the time that these students are doing thesis, they're always really great and amazing thesis because you're collaborating with essentially knowledge from other disciplines. But we do recognize that you maybe lack some software skills, kind of basic introductory skills in our digital age to get into the program. And so we ask you, when we accept you, to also take the August skills course. So you will know this because it will be in your acceptance letter that you are either highly recommended or required to take the skills workshop. This will be in late July or early August. That said, even if you're an AP student coming in advanced placement, you will still come in middle of August because all of the color courses here are part of your accredited curriculum, which ensures that when you complete this degree, you can apply for internship hours and you can test for your license down the road. I'm basically gonna kind of show you some student work across the 6 studios, and I can elaborate more on the other courses should you have questions about that. But I'm happy to get into it. Maybe one point I'll say is that architecture studios, you're moving in cohorts. So you're with the same group and your classes are all fixed. You don't even have to choose anything for the first year. For the second year, in the second semester, this winter 4, you get to choose an elective. It doesn't have to be history theory, but one of these 4 electives will be in history theory. It just depends which one you want to take and when. Studio 4 is comprehensive studio, where you do get to ballot for your instructor. For the 5th studio, option studio, I will show you more work from that. it is often, there is a travel component to it to some of the studio trips. And then you do a year-long thesis work where you also ballot for that. So you ballot for a comprehensive studio, option studio, and then you ballot for thesis seminar, which is balloting for a thesis advisor that kind of gets you thinking about your thesis project. You'll think about readings together, and that will segue into your thesis studio in the final term of the 3-year program. Happy to return to this slide later. I want to show you just some work that is representative of some of the things we're doing across these core studio semesters. The first one is about getting students who are completely new to design acquainted with, understanding sections, plans, issues of representation, but also the scales of the body, scales of circulation, such as staircases and ramps. But at the same time, we set up these assignments so that they are rigorous. And if you are an advanced student and you've already taken architecture, you are dealing with issues of geometry, you can really push yourself to design kind of an amazing set of relationships. And in this particular year, we basically worked on this interstitial building between two existing buildings in New York City that leads students both with ramps and staircases to an architecture studio and an art studio. So there's a lot of studies about spatial planning, in this case, ways to organize program, things about poche, occupiable poche, and even ways to think about grid and organizing front of house and back of house. So that is kind of the goals of the first studio in much more at the scale, I would say, of understanding dimensions to the body and by extension, then accessibility issues. The second studio, we go to a more rural topographical site. So you're trying to understand how do architects insert a building into the site and understanding the impact of a building in a site. In this case, we actually try to teach students not just of the Eurocentric perspective about architecture, but try to think about other cultures, in this case, indigenous lens into how they understand site, land, and ecology. So here we're actually, in this particular year, they were actually working on a indigenous visitor center to the Crawford conservation area, which is both a geologically rich conservation area, but also has evidence of indigenous inhabitation. This semester is all about experimentation with materiality, especially local material to that site, and pushing the kind of tectonic logics of material structures, building models now, not so much in black and white, but trying to understand how to invent and innovate with new materials. At this point, you would have had also enough building science detailing to begin to think about very simple detailing goals in a kind of 1 to 2 story building. The third semester is where you would come in if you're an advanced placement student, or you would be joined by advanced placement students if you were a 3-year student. And we like to set the studio up in Toronto. It's a great way to introduce everybody to the greater metropolitan area. And we call this the Integrated Urbanism Studio. This studio is concurrently taken by architecture students, landscape architecture students, and urban planning students, or urban design students, rather. We're often working at some areas of the Greater Toronto region, rarely the downtown core. We're looking at these areas where there's expansions that really impact ravines, ecologies, floodplains, gentrification areas where there's densification of infrastructure, but also affordable issues. This year, we're working on affordable housing, the missing middle problem, with all of the very recent changes in our zoning and policy codes. And students really understand the relationship between policy, design, and then down to the building. Here, students are working with GIS to be able to analyze data, demographic data, infrastructural data, stormwater management data, and think about the level of planning and design, as well as design. So part and parcel of practicing today as an architect is that you will work with landscape architects, you will work with urban planners and urban designers. And I think these are the moments in which we're trying to replicate those lessons with students in our program and our sister programs in the same faculty. And you're all working on the same thing with knowledge exchange and information that you pass and share with one another. I'm sure many studios that you will visit in North America all have what's called a comprehensive studio, because at this point in your curriculum, you would have had enough structures, building science, even design technology to be able to really think about the integration of all of the systems into one building. So changing scales now to the kind of integration at the building level, you will. In this case, this was a housing project. This year, we've started to look at a community center, but they're requiring you of the same thing. You are thinking about all the aspects of design today, which includes low carbon, net zero or near net zero, material choices and what that means, and all of the modeling, thermal modeling, daylight modeling that accompanies this to testify to the fact that you are designing a sustainable building. We even look at issues of life cycle analysis and maintenance. So it's not just about building today, but how it lasts through time. And you develop the building as you would through almost design development in a firm. This is a studio where I mentioned earlier that you would ballot. So we do hire many of our own esteemed practitioners. That's part of our own faculty, but also the greater Toronto area. So the partner of Moriyama Tashima is teaching a section this year. In the past, the partner of Socia Perot taught a section. It is a moment to really understand what it means to kind of practice at a firm, but to work with these different architects and realize that many people actually can answer the same exact brief in different ways. So like a competition, all of the sections have the same requirements, and yet everybody would have a slightly different slant based on their section instructor and the section instructor's interests. So it starts to set you up thinking about what is a thesis almost? How do you interpret even the same brief with a point of view? This is something you'll produce coincidentally in all of your other building science courses to basically prove that it is a viable, sustainable, and that you've chosen the right materials building. Now I'm in Option Studios. This is actually one of our more, let's say, exuberant or high budget courses. We offer, you can go to this link in our website and and maybe Gwendolyn can post it in our chat, and you can see all the things that are being offered this year and the years past, where on the left, if you kind of travel back in time, you'll be able to see a bunch. And we have our Gary Chair, who is an esteemed position. Last year was So ill from New York City. This year is Yusuke Ubuchi from University of Tokyo, who had won a Venice Biennale Golden Lion Award. And so we're trying to invite the most up-to-date, renowned researchers and experts and what they're working on so that you can learn from them and also learn a methodology, a way of practicing or a way of understanding architecture through a more expertise lens. And so we try to make sure that there's a range of subject matters from community-based design to housing to AI, and certainly our own researchers. So, as you may know, we have some of the most, I think, renowned researchers at University of Toronto, and certainly that's the case in our faculty as well. So as faculty members' current expertise in research and design are also part of the choices of Option Studio. In the same link, you should be able to also see Thesis Studios, where, oh, now I'm on to electives, but I would just maybe say that Thesis Studios are all in-house faculty members because we want you to have an advisor for the entire year. And you would choose a thesis advisor that most aligns to your thesis interests, because there is, again, a breadth of professors here that can offer a range of expertise. And so in many ways, the Option Studio kind of supplements the year-long Thesis Studio experience because you're seeing how an actual researcher or practitioner is doing their work by being a part of the Option Studio. And then in Thesis Studio, you are trying to do your own research work. I should also mention that here in the Option Studio, you can take any of the Option Studio, including the Landscape Option Studio or the Urban Design Option Studios. Again, we believe that practice today is multidisciplinary, and we think that this is actually very important for students to gain cross-disciplinary knowledge when they do practice as an architect. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Electives. I'm going to invite you to the same website to look through. We have so many electives, and you can take any of the electives across our Daniels faculty, including forestry electives and visual arts electives, which has curatorship studies. I welcome you to come take a look at all the courses that are offered, and certainly landscape electives, urban design, urban planning electives. Furthermore, should you want to take an elective outside at the Greater University of Toronto, including real estate or film studies, students have done that. And, every year there's quite a bit of movement in terms of choosing electives. Oh, and here's Thesis. So I did skip ahead to Thesis. You can see, again, the range of in-house advisors. It changes every year, although we do try to give the full range that is to make sure that students who are interested in, let's say housing or networks or more rural sites of systems are able, digital fabrication, that all of those various subject matters have an avenue of advisorship, health and architecture, for example. I welcome you to, we're about to have Option Studio reviews December 17th, 18th, 19th here at the Toronto campus. And then certainly, all the other reviews are kind of happening before or around that time, which will be posted on our website. And then I think our Instagram account actually does an amazing job of trying to capture all the types of student work that's here. And I welcome you to browse around and take a look. Um, I'm going to skip ahead and I'll let you browse through that handle when you get a minute. Um, Lastly, I'll just maybe plug that we're very proud of Daniel Wang, who is the most recent Prix de Rome winner for emerging practitioners. This was his project on invisible maintenance, an alternative perspective on architectural sustainability through continual maintenance, cleaning, and repair. And, this is the kind of thesis work that I think has made a huge impact for the built environment. And in general, I think that our thesis program has done really well to prepare students for research, if that's your interest, especially if you are interested in also being an academic for yourself in future. So I find that we're both able to prepare academics as well as practitioners. And we're very proud of all of our Prix de Rome prize winners in the last, I feel like this is just less than 10 years. We've basically won more than half of them. So I am back on this page and I am at 5:25, my local time, and I want to be able to answer your specific questions. I see hands already. I'm going to let Gwen maybe read me questions and I'm going to turn on, I'm in my office at the studio at the school and it doesn't think I'm here. Let me turn on the light. Oh,
Do you want to keep your screen sharing or do you want to take that down? It's up
well,
to you.
if we need it, I can, yeah,
Sure.
I can re,
Absolutely. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started
yeah.
with the questions. Thank you to those who have submitted questions already. So the first question is, if I applied last year but did not get admitted, can I use the same email account that I used to apply again this year?
I don't see why not. Um, Absolutely. In fact, you should tell us that you applied last year as part of your letter. I think it's always nice to know that, we are important to you. Um, Actually, for those of you, it is nice to see just this is a general service announcement. It is nice when you apply to us that you don't write another school's name by accident and vice versa. It makes us feel less special. So just double check that. I know everybody repeats everything, but just do a last double check. That's my advice on that.
Okay, so this person is asking about a professional reference that they have that uses a Gmail account, and the instructions say they should contact the program directly about that. Who should they contact? Is it the admissions office? Is it you? Who should they contact?
I'm guessing this is a question for graduate at, if you could put the address in, I don't have it off the top of my head.
I will
So
put that in the chat for sure. Absolutely. So for that question, you would send your specific question to graduate@daniels.utoronto.ca, and I'm putting that in the chat.
And
Um,
maybe I'll just jump in and say that we don't have Alex here with us at this hour, and the technical questions about emails or the website or like those, I will have to refer you, or even about financial aid, I'm going to have to refer you. My specific purview is really about the curriculum, so I just wanted to preface that.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that there's up to 24 students accepted into the advanced standing or advanced placement. I'm wondering if there's a number of students that are accepted into the 3-year master's program.
Yes, so our target has been 68 for the 3-year program and 24 for the AP program. Although we've had such a great this year we're at 30 students for the AP program, and they're all amazing, and we're very happy to have them. And I think we're at 70 students for the 3-year program. So we're trying to keep around there. Yeah, that's the ballpark.
Okay. How does Daniels support students wanting to do research rather than building design?
Well, you have to do building design. If you're in the MArch program, it is just part of an accredited program. Wherever you go, I think that there's some component of a master's of architecture degree where we have to make sure that you can do building design. But that said, I would say that our program actually leans more towards the ability to kind of not only get technical information, but lots of opportunity to work with current researchers, which are many of our faculty, through classes, through the electives. You know, even when we're teaching you software programs, we're trying to talk about the kind of biases of the software programs. So there's always a layer of conceptual and theoretical umbrella view, overview, let's say, of anything that you're working on, even though you are and will get technical information. Um, if you only want to do research, I don't know. I just don't know if I don't know what that program would be like in architecture. Maybe it would be an arts program that isn't accredited, essentially. Yeah.
Is it possible to see example portfolios of those who did receive an offer of admission?
No, we cannot do that. Sorry, those are private to the individuals. I'm sure in the world of math, you know, you go on Pinterest, you can see anything today. And so there would be a lot to see, I think, out on the web. I think it's important, maybe I'll make this point here, in that AI is pretty adept at making any images now. I think it's so important to demonstrate your design thinking and your design process. So we are really looking for authorship. How did you think through a problem? One of my favorite portfolios I've ever seen was a guy who fixed bikes. And, you know, he has no design background, but he loved fixing bikes. And he basically outlined through diagrams and photographs um, what his thinking process is. What are the goals of the thing that he is trying to design towards, and what are the tools or the methods, and what are the constraints that gave him the design solution? So those are the things that I would prioritize in your portfolio.
Okay, so this question is, do students with bachelor's in interior design compete for admission with architecture bachelor students or with other bachelor students? So I guess the question is, are architecture students in one category and everybody else in another, or is everybody assessed together?
Everybody's assessed together. Yeah, the bike guy is assessed next to the architecture student. Again, I think the committee's discussions are really about design thinking and design process. And so it doesn't matter to us as we're evaluating our own undergraduate students, you know, who are very much in architecture that doesn't, there's no quotas for each kind. I put it that way.
Okay. Is it okay to have one of my reference letters be written by a contract lecturer?
Sure. I mean, I think it's always helpful to know you from an academic standpoint. That should definitely be one of your letters. A work relation, if you have worked. I mean, the academic, yeah, I would say out of three, I would love to have two academics if possible. I think those are really helpful.
For someone who has an undergraduate degree in something other than architecture, what are some of the skills or software that they could or should begin looking into to put their best foot forward if they get into the program?
Oh, I like that a lot. Thank you for thinking ahead. We are software agnostic, so we will let students choose whichever software they want to use. Although I will say that the majority of our students use Rhino, and that's somewhere I would start to play around with. But if you do take this skills workshop, we will also try to get you up to speed through that workshop.
This person has been out of school for 4 years or over 4 years, and the last 2 years of their studies were unfortunately remote due to the pandemic. Since then, they've been working professionally. Will it be detrimental to use only professional references for their application?
I think it helps to get one academic reference. Just because I think we want to also know who you are as a student, even though I understand that it's remote. And certainly you can kind of elaborate on that in your personal statement. And I think that's also true for your portfolio. We don't want to just see professional work. By the way, when we do see professional work, we like to know what your exact role is in the professional work. And you need to credit the designers, your company, your firm. If you do paired group work, we like to know your partners. We like to know who your professor was. Crediting is very important. And then what is your role in that? And so it's specific to this person. I would recommend also the portfolio to have both academic work and professional work and for the letters as well.
Okay. This question is in regards to how many applications do you typically receive for the Masters of Architecture program each year?
I don't have that answer. That will be an Alex.
No problem. What would be the average studio size, class size by year? And are there faculty who conduct class meetings over Zoom, or do all professors teach in person?
Every class is in person. And I will give you a little bit of a caveat. So let's go through the sizes first. The um, core studios, so the first four will be 1 to 12 is the maximum, maybe occasionally 1 to 13, just because the numbers don't work out perfectly. So that would be the maximum. When you're in option studio or thesis studio, it's 1 to 10 or 11. That's the usual. Option studio are the only ones where it might be half or less than half remote. So when we do invite somebody traveling from Paris, or as we have in the past, or traveling from Bangladesh, they might have clumped a few, maybe a month of that will be in person, and then a month of that will be remote, and then they'll come back for the final month. The arrangement, however, will always be posted when you ballot for the instructor, and you'll know how many of those days are remote sessions versus in-person sessions. And usually, let's say there's 13 weeks of class, we require that at least 7 to 8 of those are in-person courses. But other than that, everything else is in person.
There are a number of questions about how one can determine if they are eligible for the AP 2-year program. Is there a list of programs that might qualify for that, or is it individually assessed?
The best way to find out is if you contact your bachelor's degree and ask them if there are an accredited bachelor's of science, like architectural science is usually the terminology, bachelor's of architectural science degree, in which case you will be eligible. If you're unsure, I mean, we do sort and we will have to look at your eligibility. We will look at your school and we'll probably contact your school to find out.
Okay. Could you describe a little bit what the grad student lifestyle might be like at the Daniels faculty? During summer times, are grad students typically working in design firms? Does U of T provide support in terms of research and or work opportunities?
Big question, lots of parts. Typical life before the summer, I would say that um, we've recently readjusted the schedule so that no one cohort comes in more than four. So 4 days a week is what we're trying to kind of push everybody's classes into. This is based on student feedback that they're trying to hold a job. I will say that I've heard anecdotally that it's hard to hold a very full, like a very intense architecture job. You basically can do it during that 1 day a week. So most students who hold jobs have a more light load or a light job. And it also helps students who are commuting to kind of concentrate it into 4 days. But then those 4 days are tight. And if you didn't know this about architecture, it is a rigorous profession and education. So this is not just about University of Toronto. I would say any school you go to, it is just a kind of arduous subject. You're actually learning a lot of subjects all at once in order to put a building together. Summertime, most of our students are out there working. So they are we do have a networking event where we help students meet a bunch of practitioners, both locally and in other Canadian or abroad cities like New York and Boston. And although I don't know what the American scene will be this year in our network exchange, but students are often working in the summers. As you get up in the years, you can I think it's usually the upperclassmen who establish a rapport. Sorry, my window's open. Who establish a rapport with research professors, so they will often also be research assistants for their professors. We also offer travel abroad courses in the summer. And this past year, people went to Berlin, Costa Rica, and I'm blanking on the one more right now. But those are different times of the summer, and you have to apply for them. So a variety of summer activities, but I would say that most of our students are working and or helping doing research at the university.
Okay. You kind of answered this question already, but this question is about the different softwares that they can use. Is it possible to use BIM, Vectorworks, Revit, Rhino over traditional 2D programs like CAD?
Um, for the most part, we are again agnostic, but I'm not gonna lie. There's some professors who love Rhino or love we don't have any professors who love Revit I think but I mean for the most part I think if you can get the work done, I have students who insist on SketchUp and they'll use SketchUp. um I know that I know of one professor who still loves AutoCAD, as a way to deal with line weights, but we're not micromanaging. We'll be looking at your line weights and looking at what the production is on the representation side rather than it being focused on the software side.
Okay. This question is, I completed a BA degree in the UK and eager to do a master's in Toronto. Do you encourage international students to apply?
Absolutely. We have a lot of international students. I don't have the number on hand of the percentage of international students that's with us, but certainly we have students from the UK, from the US, from India, from Asia, different countries in Asia, um, from the Middle East, and from South America that I can think of right now, anyways. And that's true of our faculty as well. So I absolutely encourage international students to apply.
Okay. This question is, I am highly interested in research
Oh,
surrounding
I'm so
architecture.
sorry. If
Sorry,
I
go ahead.
may jump in for a quick second, I will add just for the UK student, um, recently this is such recent news that you might want to look into it more, but I know that Canada and the UK have signed an accord where you can test for each other's licensure, I believe, or the internship hours. I forget how it translates, but there's reciprocity in the licensure is the nomenclature there. And that's worth looking into, especially if you want to pivot and practice back there in future. There's already a reciprocity between the US and Mexico. And then certainly the Canberra Accord is something that you can look into where the accreditation is agreed upon by various entities across Korea, Australia. I'm not going to name all the countries that have signed, but we all agreed to certain baseline accreditation criteria, which makes the degrees recognized in those other countries. Okay, sorry,
That's
Gwen.
okay.
Yeah.
So this person is highly interested in research surrounding architecture and health and well-being. Their concern is that the portfolio might not have projects that are exactly health related, but are more so well-being on a general spectrum. Would that cause any type of issue or discrepancy?
Not at all. We think of the education as something, again, we're welcoming students with no background in architecture. So think about that. And we think that anybody can catch up and get invested in whether it's health and architecture or digital fabrication or, like I think in this curriculum, you will be able to do all of that, even if your portfolio does not represent it right now.
Have there ever been any students who came in from bachelors of civil engineering?
Um, I think so. And here's what I will say about I think this is where it would be great to have Alex here with me in future, who is the at the graduate email address that Gwen can post. But we have an exemption process. So what does happen when you get in, and let's say you're a civil engineer and you look at this structures one and structures, you can apply. We will be asking you for syllabi, scores, grades, etc. Alex can elaborate, and there's a form that you fill out. And essentially, the professors of each of these courses will evaluate whether you are exempted from that course. Now, once you're exempted from that course, it doesn't mean you graduate sooner. You just have more electives to take, which means you can take more of the electives that specializes towards the topics you're interested in, or you can broaden your learnings from across campus at University of Toronto. The only caveat is that you cannot be exempted out of any of the studios. The studios, the blue strip up top stay, those are not exemptable. Only the other kind of design technology, history, structures, those classes can be evaluated and be exempted. So for those of you that did not get into AP status, but already took a bunch of accredited courses, you can apply for exemptions and then see which ones you get exempted from.
Okay. So this question is in regards to how do those who don't have a background in architecture, how do they fare in the program? This particular prospective student has a bachelor's in public administration with a specialty in public policy.
So I want to be very frank. I'm a student who did not study architecture as my undergrad, and it was eye-opening for me to like. I think you do feel like you're a little behind in the beginning, but miraculously you do catch up over time. So I just want to put that out there so that you're fully aware. I think there is with the hardship in the beginning is it's like a whole new culture that some of your classmates are already aware of, and that you're trying to learn the visual language of how to express yourself. The silver lining is that by the time you get to more specialized courses towards the latter half, I would say the latter year and a half of your 3 years, you actually have way more insight in some ways to approach architecture from the lens of another discipline, like from policy, from social science. And those are incredibly valuable, and they make for amazing thesis projects and kind of research interests. So you do kind of have to work extra hard. That's my own experience.
Okay. Would you say that Daniels is more focused on design abstract or more technically focused?
I would definitely say that we're less technically. I mean, I don't know who you're comparing us to, but of the Toronto schools, I think TMU is definitely a much more technical school. I think Waterloo is really preparing students through their co-op program for practicing. And I think we are definitely providing you with everything you need to know to practice. And that's kind of a baseline for all of us, for all of the accredited schools. But because we're at a very well-regarded research university, the available research, conceptual, theoretical thinking that is available to you is kind of a lot more, I would say. And this is a graduate degree. So to some degree, you get to shape that. If you just want to get technical and get into all digital fabrication and technology, you can shape that. But at the baseline, I would say that our core curriculum does try to give you a blend of everything.
Okay. In thinking of this statement of intent for an application, is there anything in particular you would be looking for or find relevant?
Um, I don't know how to answer this on behalf, like, generally on behalf of everybody on the committee, because I think we latch on to different things. Um, I, I, me personally, I am looking for like, you know, your design interest. If you're not in architecture, what brings you to architecture? How are you viewing the world? How do you think through a design project or a process? Um, I like specificity. Like I like a specific example. Again, this is so personal. So please, you have to take it with a grain of salt because I might not be the person reading your application. But I like, people's observations, clear specificity of like what it is about a space that they appreciate or about design that they appreciate over generalizations.
Okay. Are students in this program supported to be able to find internships during their program? And the example is, how does this master's program support students who wish to get ready for the workplace rather than research? If there are internship opportunities, do you have any numbers or percentages on how many students were able to find internships during their master's program?
So we don't have a co-op at the school, and so we don't specifically, it's not part of the curriculum that we are getting you job opportunities. We have networking events, and that's basically the ways in which you meet practitioners. You also meet people through many of our teaching positions that are offered to practitioners. I don't have statistics. Again, this might be something maybe Alex has more of, but right now, all of at least the students that I know of are already working from the last graduating class. I think being part of University of Toronto and in Toronto has been kind of a wonderful networking opportunity. So specific to practice oriented, I think we are very, I mean, again, these are all anecdotal. I don't have like statistics, but we teach a pretty rigorous design technology sequence. The first of our design technology courses are more about getting acquainted with, let's say, Rhino to Grasshopper to Python parametric design topics. But the whole second sequence of design technology two has been about updating what architects need to learn today, which is being able to gather data about energy modeling, about daylighting, about thermal modeling. These programs, even about life cycle maintenance, has been really helpful for our alumnus. I've heard many anecdotal stories that they were interns, but they're actually the ones running the simulation for their building designs to advise on the project in terms of heat gains or aperture design. So I've been just hearing a lot from our students so far, our recent graduates, and even summer internships. And that's been a recent curriculum reform that I update, trying to get much more technical in our technology courses and our building science courses. We have 5 building science courses, which is many more than others, including a site engineering course, which I've heard, again, great things about in practice and application, because just putting a building on site and what it does relative to stormwater issues, grading, all of this is actually being taught by a faculty member who's in both an architect and a landscape architect. And then last but not least, we actually have a whole year of professional practice instead of one semester. The whole year engages with everything from cost analysis to spec writing, to talking to policymakers. So we are again in the city, which offers us an amazing opportunity to bring people who are actually the cost estimators in as guests so there's a guest every week almost, with the exception of 2 weeks, I think, out of the 13 weeks. And students are engaging with how to essentially run a firm or even engage with all of the nuances of practice from a very from the practitioner's lens rather than just from an internship lens. I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers that question.
We only have a few minutes left, so we won't be able to get through all of the questions that are here. So I would encourage everybody who does have questions, please submit it to graduate@daniels.utoronto.ca for all of your questions to be answered. I will try to get through what I'm going to combine two together and try to get through a few more.
Okay.
So this question is for somebody who has a background in biology and they're wanting to find ways for it to intersect with architecture. And they also have a second question is it possible to get involved with the Grit Lab as part of that?
Yes, so Glit Lab, I mean, I think that's again, when you are here, I think you would get involved with the faculty that are doing that. And you can again take electives across landscape architecture and definitely reach out. I've had a student in biology before, and she did an amazing project. I mean, I think there is the first 2 years or 3 semesters that are kind of core curriculum heavy. So you are just learning all of the basics or foundations for what an architect does. And then I think the latter half, if you're coming from a non-architecture background, lets you assemble that with your other expertise. So I just think that's important to note again.
Okay, I think we have time for one final question. So this is for somebody who does have a degree from the UK. And so in thinking about studying here in Toronto or in Canada, is there anything that they need to know kind of in advance in terms of codes, imperial versus metric, access, anything that they need to consider considering it's Canada, not the UK?
I would advise to, if you are planning on moving back to UK to kind of sort out the licensure piece. I know there's reciprocity, but what does it mean exactly? Canada, we are both metric and imperial. Usually we are metric on the bigger projects, and then if you're moving more towards interior design, we are imperial. So both work, and professional practice, again, that year-long course really gets you acquainted with Canadian code, Canadian policy. Now, when you're back practicing in the UK, you might need to readjust and take a course or get yourself familiar with another set of code and policies. Oh, you're on mute all of a sudden.
We have
Yeah.
come to the end of our time together, and thank you everyone for so many questions. Thank you, Professor Vivian Lee, for answering all those questions. And so again, if you do have questions that were not answered this evening, please send them to graduate@daniels.utoronto.ca.
Thanks
Thank you,
for all
everyone.
the clapping hands, everyone. Have a
Bye-bye.
good night.